Imagine this, one of Hollywood's most respected actors, sitting on a television set. The cameras are rolling. The audience is smiling. Everything seems normal, and then in just 34 seconds, it all falls apart. What happens next would become one of the most shocking moments in live television history. A moment where respect died, and dignity stood its ground. The Loose Women studio was buzzing that morning. Liam Neeson, the man who made us weep in Schindler's List, who became an action icon in Taken, had agreed to a simple interview. He was there to talk about his new film. Nothing controversial. Nothing complicated, just a conversation. But Denise Welch, one of the show's most outspoken panelists, had other plans. She sat there with that look. The one regular viewers knew all too well. The look that said, "Trouble is coming." While the other hosts smiled politely, Welch was preparing something. Something that would shatter the illusion of daytime TV charm. Something that would cost her everything. "Liam, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here." The main host's voice was warm, welcoming, professional. "Tell us about stepping back into the action genre at your age." Neeson smiled. That signature warmth in his voice filled the room. "Well, age is just a number when it comes to storytelling." He spoke about his craft, about bringing authenticity to roles, about how experience adds depth that youth simply cannot replicate. The audience nodded. This was the kind of thoughtful conversation they'd tuned in for. But beside him, Denise Welch was shifting in her seat. Her fingers drummed impatiently against her coffee mug. Her eyes gleamed with something dark, something predatory. "The preparation for these roles is quite intense," Neeson continued, unaware of the storm brewing beside him. "There's the physical training, of course, but also the emotional preparation." Another panelist chimed in, praising his authenticity. "Your fans love seeing you in these roles because you bring such depth to them." Neeson nodded graciously. "I think audiences can sense when an actor is truly committed to a role. It's not about the stunts or the special effects. It's about finding the human heart of the story." The conversation flowed beautifully. This was television at its best. But Welch's patience had run out. "Liam," she interrupted sharply, her voice slicing through the pleasant atmosphere like a blade. "Can we talk about something that actually matters here?" The studio fell silent. Neeson turned to her, his warm expression shifting to cautious confusion. The other hosts exchanged nervous glances. "I'm sorry?" Neeson asked politely, still giving her the benefit of the doubt. And then she said it. "What I want to know is why you think anyone still cares about what you have to say." The words hung in the air like poison. "You're what, 70, 72? And you're still running around making these ridiculous action films like you're some kind of tough guy." The audience gasped. This wasn't just rude. This was career suicide. Neeson's face went pale, not with embarrassment, but with shock at the sheer audacity of what he'd just heard. One of the other hosts tried to intervene. "Denise, perhaps we should," but Welch was just getting started. "No, I think this needs to be said. Here's a man who's made millions pretending to be something he's not. And now he comes on our show expecting us to fawn over him." She leaned back with a cruel smirk. "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not impressed." The camera captured every second of Neeson's reaction. This was a man who had faced personal tragedy with grace, who had played some of the most challenging roles in cinema history, who had always conducted himself with class, and here he was, being ambushed. "I think there may be some misunderstanding here," Neeson said carefully, his voice still measured. "I came here to discuss my work, to share insights about the film industry. I certainly didn't come here to be attacked personally." "Attacked?" Welch laughed harshly. "This is called honesty, something this industry could use more of." The other panelists were now visibly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, looking anywhere but at the disaster unfolding before them. "Are you suggesting," Neeson asked calmly, "that my work lacks merit? That the directors who hire me, the audiences who watch my films, are all somehow mistaken?" Welch's voice rose. "What I'm suggesting is that maybe it's time for you to step aside and let some younger, more talented actors have a chance. Stop clinging to your faded glory and accept that your time is over." And there it was, the moment that would be replayed, thousands of times across social media. The comment that would destroy Denise Welch's credibility forever. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the camera operators seemed frozen. Neeson sat perfectly still, processing what had just been said to him. This wasn't about his film anymore. This was about basic human respect, and Welch had shown she had none. When Neeson finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made everyone realize they were witnessing something extraordinary. "Miss Welch," he began, his tone measured but unmistakably firm. "I've been in this business for over 4 decades. I've worked with some of the most talented directors, writers, and actors in the world. I've never claimed to be the greatest actor alive, but I have always tried to approach my work with honesty and dedication." He paused. "What I find remarkable is that you've invited me here as your guest. And yet you seem to believe that gives you the right to insult not just me, but everyone who has ever enjoyed my work." Welch rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please don't try to make this about your fans." "Actually," Neeson replied calmly, "this is about something much more fundamental than box office numbers. This is about treating people with basic courtesy and respect. Something that seems to be in short supply on this panel today." The other host frantically tried to redirect, but Welch wasn't finished. "I want to know why Liam thinks he deserves special treatment." Neeson's eyebrows raised slightly. "I was under the impression that basic politeness was standard treatment for any guest on a professional television program." He paused. "Clearly, I was mistaken." And then Neeson turned the tables. "Miss Welch, I'm curious about something. In your extensive experience as a working actor, how many leading roles in major motion pictures have you been offered in the past, say, 5 years?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Welch's mouth opened and closed. "No words came out because," Neeson continued, his voice perfectly controlled, "I'm wondering what qualifies you to make judgments about who should and shouldn't be working in this industry." The trap had sprung. "From where I'm sitting, it seems like you might be confusing opinion with expertise." Welch's face flushed red. "Don't you dare try to make this about my career. Your career," Neeson said quietly, "has been built on the support of audiences who choose to buy tickets to my films. It's been sustained by directors who continue to offer me roles because they believe I can serve their stories." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Your assessment of my career, on the other hand, seems to be based entirely on your personal desire to create conflict for the sake of television ratings." His voice dropped lower. "I find that rather sad, actually." The word hit Welch like a physical blow. "You know, Miss Welch, I've done interviews in dozens of countries with hundreds of journalists. I've been asked tough questions about my performances, my choices, my personal life." He looked directly at her. "But I have never, in my entire career, encountered someone who seemed to believe that being deliberately hurtful was the same thing as being insightful." Welch was now visibly flustered. "You're twisting my words." "I'm simply responding to what you've said," Neeson replied calmly. And then he stood up. The simple act filled the entire studio with tension. "I'm leaving, Miss Welch." "Where are you going?" she demanded. "I'm leaving because I came here to have a conversation, not to be subjected to a public attack by someone who confuses rudeness with insight." The other hosts desperately tried to convince him to stay, but Neeson was already moving toward the edge of the set. "I won't pretend that what happened here is acceptable simply because we're on television." Welch made one last desperate attempt. "This is ridiculous." "You can't just storm off because someone asked tough questions." Neeson stopped, looked back at her one final time. "Miss Welch, if you genuinely believe that what you did here constitutes asking tough questions, then I feel sorry for you." His voice was soft, almost pitying, "because that suggests you don't understand the difference between journalism and bullying." And with that, he was gone. The cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing the absolute silence that followed his departure. Welch sat frozen, mouth slightly open. Finally realizing what she had done, the other hosts looked anywhere but at her. In those final moments, viewers around the world were left with one inescapable conclusion. They had just watched a masterclass in dignity and an equally powerful demonstration of how quickly arrogance can destroy a career. Liam Neeson walked away that day, but his dignity? It remained perfectly intact. The same could not be said for everyone who stayed behind.